My name's David. I'm 46. I live in a town where people ask how your day was without waiting for the answer. A place where history collects like dust, thick in the corners of every relationship. Pennsylvania, the part that doesn't make postcards. Gray skies, slow trains, and neighbors who shovel your walk without saying hello. 5 years ago, I married Laura. She was the kind of woman who spoke in half volume, like her life had always been set on mute. She worked at the library in the archives section mostly alone. She cataloged things, dates, names, thin threads of memory that belonged to other people. I used to watch her from a distance, wonder how someone so soft could stay so intact in a world that cracked people open every day. We met by accident, or maybe by proximity. I was repairing a broken window in the reading room, climbing down from the ladder when she looked up from a cart of hardcovers and said, "Careful." That was it. No flirty tone, no forced smile, just careful. And somehow, that word stayed with me longer than any hello ever had. She told me later she liked that I didn't ask too many questions. I told her I liked that she didn't expect me to fill the silence. I moved in the following year. Her house wasn't much. Old vinyl siding, a porch that sagged in the corner, and the kind of narrow staircase that creaks even under a child's footstep. But I made it work, fixed what I could, replaced what I couldn't. I brought my tools, my quiet, my presence. And then there was Oliver, her son. He was 12 when I came into their lives. He had his father's last name, his father's jaw, and his father's distance. He never asked where I came from, never asked why I stayed. Oliver didn't hate me. Hate would have been something. He just learned how to function around me, like an appliance he didn't know the name of but figured out how to ignore. He'd walk into a room and talk to Laura as if I weren't there. If the Wi-Fi cut out, he'd hand me his phone and mumble, "Can you fix this?" Like I was the guy from Best Buy. When the pipes under the kitchen sink froze, he asked, "Is he gonna fix it?" Like I was a tenant, not a part of the home. Eventually, he didn't use my name. Didn't use any name. That guy. Him. Later, the tech guy. It was always said with that smirk kids develop too early, the one that tells you they already know how this ends. Laura didn't correct him. She'd offer a soft glance when he walked out of the room. The kind that's supposed to mean thank you, but ends up meaning nothing. It was all quiet approval. The kind that evaporates before it ever warms the air. I thought it would change. I gave it time. I let Oliver choose the distance. Figured if I kept showing up, if I kept fixing things, if I just didn't leave, something would shift. I showed up at every parent-teacher meeting, even the ones Laura said weren't necessary. I sat through band concerts even though he stopped playing by the second year. I drove him to friends' houses when his mother was too tired from work. I paid for things he never knew needed paying for. Sneakers that didn't pinch his toes. Braces that corrected a bite he never knew was crooked. Subscriptions for apps he never thanked anyone for. I wasn't his father. I knew that, but I was something. I thought that was enough. It's funny how quickly something turns into nothing when no one names it. Laura and I had our moments. We never fought. That's not the same as being happy. She moved through life like a ghost who'd made peace with being invisible. I matched her tone, tried to meet her where she lived, in the quiet. I stopped asking questions she didn't want to answer. When she forgot our anniversary 1 year, I told her I hadn't remembered either. When she said she was too tired for dinner, I made something for both of us anyway and left it on the stove. We didn't kiss much, didn't touch much, but we shared space. I thought maybe that was enough, too. There was a rhythm to our lives. A quiet one. I fixed things, pay things. She'd nod and go to sleep early. Oliver would drift through like a breeze that never stopped long enough to be felt. People on the outside thought we were stable. That was the word I heard most. Stable. Not happy. Not close. Just structurally sound. Like a shed that doesn't collapse in a storm, even if no one uses it. The cracks came slow. Not dramatic. No slammed doors or screamed words. Just small signs. Like how Laura never corrected people when they assumed I wasn't Oliver's father. Or how Oliver never once called me by name in front of his friends. He'd say, "Oh, the guy my mom married." Like I was a stranger who'd won a prize he didn't think anyone should have wanted. The worst part wasn't the rejection. It was the indifference. I could have handled being disliked. That's at least something to work with. But when a person doesn't care whether you stay or go, that's when you realize you were never actually part of the equation. Still, I held on. Because you don't walk away from people who haven't asked you to leave. Not unless you're looking for an excuse. And I wasn't. Not yet. The first time I felt the shift was during a family Zoom call. Cousins from both coasts, an aunt from Florida, people I'd never met in person but had helped set up the call for. I spent 20 minutes fixing their logins, connecting the audio, making sure everyone's screen worked. Someone asked, "So who's there with you now, Laura?" She smiled. That quiet, half smile she always wore, and said, "Oh, that's just David. He's kind of our background guy. Nothing works without him, but you barely notice." The words hit me like dust in a sunbeam. Harmless at first. Then you start coughing. Oliver laughed. "Yeah," he said, grinning at the screen. "He's basically our IT support." They laughed. Everyone. Even the aunt from Florida. I muted the mic before I said something I'd regret. They kept talking, joking, laughing, like I wasn't there, like I hadn't made any of it possible. I watched the screen, and I watched myself disappear. That night, something in me started to change. Not fast, not in anger, just a quiet unraveling, like a machine powering down. But that part comes later. For now, all I can say is this. I was there, present, reliable, the man who fixed the router, the door frame, the dripping tub, the man who never asked for thanks because he thought love was the reward. But love, it turns out, has a different payment schedule when you're not the real father. And my balance was long overdue. I didn't say anything after the Zoom call, didn't storm out, didn't slam the laptop, just closed the screen. Click, silence. They stayed in the living room for a while, laughing, replaying highlights. Laura poured wine. Oliver scrolled through group chat replies, reading them out loud like an MC. I sat at the far end of the kitchen table, phone face down, hands folded, listening to the sound of my own vanishing. That night, I lay awake while Laura slept beside me, her breath steady, her body turned toward the wall. I stared at the ceiling and counted seconds between trains. We lived near a freight line, the kind that passes without pause, long and heavy. You can feel it in your bones, but you don't hear it anymore once you've lived here long enough. That's how I felt in this house. Weight without sound. In the morning, I brewed coffee and sat alone on the porch. October had just started to bite. The cold was sharp, honest. I liked it better than the temperature inside. 3 hours later, I revoked Zoom Pro from the family account. No warning. No explanation. I didn't do it to make a point. I did it because they didn't think I mattered, so I stopped matching in ways they relied on. The subscription had been under my name for years. I paid every renewal, set up the passwords, chosen the features. They wouldn't even notice until the next call failed to start. 2 days later, I removed Oliver from the Apple Family plan. He'd still have his music, but it'd bounce back on the next app purchase. I changed the card on file, canceled his monthly Spotify, turned off auto-renew for the VPN I'd installed on his laptop. The digital things he never thanked me for, gone one by one. Laura didn't ask. She was too busy, or too indifferent. I didn't expect confrontation, just confusion. That was the difference. Anger means someone sees you. Confusion means they forgot you were involved in the first place. That Friday, I saw an Amazon login attempt. My old password. Probably Oliver. Maybe Laura. Denied. I waited. No one said a word. They thought it was a glitch. No one glitched me into this family. I stopped replying in group texts. Birthday reminders came and went. I didn't speak over dinner unless spoken to. When Oliver asked what happened to the HBO subscription, I said, maybe it expired. He nodded and left the room. I was already fading. But the real moment, the pivot, came a week later. Laura stepped into my office after dinner. My space. The only room I hadn't surrendered to their silence. She didn't knock. Just stood there holding her phone. My iCloud isn't syncing, she said. I looked at her. Just looked. Then I said, maybe the background stopped running. She stared at me like I'd spoken in code. Then she left. That night, I stared at our shared finances. We weren't married by law. Just long enough and close enough to make the lines blur. She'd asked once if I wanted to make it official. I said we already were. She nodded. That was the last time we talked about it. But the accounts, those were real. The autopays, the shared utilities, the joint grocery apps. I paid the car insurance, the Wi-Fi, the phone plans. Her name was on none of it. Mine covered everything. It started simple. I removed her card from my Apple ID. She'd lose access to the family calendar, our shared photo stream, her iCloud storage. Small things, but deliberate. The next day, I shut down the Netflix profiles, all but mine. 3 names gone. Just David left, blinking like a survivor. That night, she brought it up, half-hearted, between spoonfuls of soup. Did something happen with Netflix? I shrugged. Probably a billing issue. She didn't press. The less you're expected to explain, the more you realize how little you're seen. A few days later, she tried to link a new debit card to my autopay account. The bank flagged it, notified me. I rejected the update and locked the account. Switched it to 2-factor authentication. That evening, she mentioned it offhand. Weird issue with the bank. Probably a glitch. I didn't respond. She didn't ask if I'd done anything. That would have required curiosity. She just chalked it up to the same invisible hand that made lights flicker and apps crash. I wasn't her husband. I was background, a shadow with a wallet. So I took it back, piece by piece. When Oliver's PlayStation started asking for login verification, he walked into my office and said, "Hey, something's wrong with my account." I looked up from my screen. "Whose account?" He blinked. "Mine." I nodded. "Then fix it." He hesitated. Didn't push. It was easier to assume the console was broken than admit the man behind it had stopped lifting the curtain. 3 nights later, I deleted the shared grocery list. Cleared the cache on the family password manager. Set every bill to private. Laura didn't notice right away. She was busy grading papers, scrolling Pinterest. She liked photos of bathrooms she'd never remodel. Then came the card denial at the pharmacy. She was buying vitamins, her usual brand. She called me from the parking lot. "Something's wrong with the joint card." I said, "I canceled it." Silence. Then, "Why?" I let the silence stretch until it bent. Then I said, "Why not?" Click. That was the real break. Not with shouting, but with acknowledgement. She knew now. Knew I'd stopped performing the role. Knew the support beams were pulling back. She didn't argue. Not really. She just stopped speaking. The house grew colder. Oliver stayed in his room more. Ate faster. Didn't ask for rides. Didn't ask for anything. I didn't offer. We passed like ghosts in a hallway none of us wanted to renovate. Then came the envelope. An email at first, flagged urgent. The school trip deposit hadn't cleared. Oliver was supposed to go to Boston for a debate meet. Non-refundable if not paid by Monday. They'd tried to charge the usual card. But the card was dead. Laura came into the room with her laptop, eyes tight. "Did you cancel the school card?" I looked at her, then nodded. She stood there like she was waiting for an explanation. I gave her one. "You called me background. Oliver called me tech support. So I updated the software." Her lip trembled. A sound caught in her throat. Not quite a sob. Not quite a word. She left the room. Didn't mention it again. Oliver didn't go to Boston. No one asked why. But I knew they knew. They'd built the house on my back. Then laughed when I crouched. Now the house leaned. And they looked surprised. They didn't talk to me for 3 days after the Boston trip was canceled. Not that talking was ever the norm, but this was different. This was punishment. A cold shoulder from people who had already turned their backs. The silence wasn't new. Just louder. Oliver stomped more. Closed doors harder. He knew something had shifted, but he didn't know how deep the shift ran. I watched him pace the house, glancing at his phone like it owed him an apology. He didn't ask why the Spotify family plan had vanished, why his backup files weren't syncing anymore, why his app purchases now required approval. He just sighed louder each time, rolled his eyes, muttered my name under his breath when he thought I couldn't hear. Laura stayed in her shell. She worked late, graded papers in bed, fell asleep with the laptop open beside her. I stopped turning off the screen, let the glow spill across her face like a reminder of what she really wanted to look at. I had stopped guessing what she thought. That was its own peace. She never once asked if I'd reconsider. I don't think she believed she had the right. Or maybe she never cared enough to pretend. The real test came the following week. Oliver's school had a parent access portal, something I'd set up, paid for, managed. Grades, attendance, behavior notices. One morning, the system emailed me. It was time to renew. A simple button. Just $34.99 for the year. I didn't click it. The next day, Laura asked if I'd gotten the email. I said yes. She waited for more. Got none. Then she said, "He needs that for college applications. Some of the programs ask for a parent login." I looked at her. Then a parent should pay for it. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Walked away. It was always like that now. Walk away. Don't engage. Don't confront the man who used to keep the lights on. They never called me selfish. Not directly. But selfish is what they meant when they left dishes in the sink and waited for them to be done. When Oliver said, "There's no hot water," like the world had betrayed him, not realizing I'd shut off the boiler's smart control. When Laura said, "We're out of printer ink," and I said, "I know." I didn't replenish. I didn't fix. I watched the systems I built decay without my maintenance. One by one, they broke. Then came the real bill. Oliver had applied for a summer program at Penn State, a leadership initiative for exceptional youth. Laura had told me about it months before. She'd asked, without looking up from her phone, "Would you be willing to cover it if he gets in?" And I, still dumb, still hungry for belonging, had said, "Of course." He got in. The invoice came with a gold seal and a payment deadline. Laura printed it out, slid it across the table like a peace offering. "This means a lot to him," she said. I nodded. "I'm sure it does." She waited. "Deadline's next week," she added. I said, "I won't be paying it." Her hands didn't move, just her eyes. They searched my face for some crack, some softness she could crawl back into. "You promised," she whispered. "No," I said. I said yes to the version of this family where I mattered. That version expired. She blinked fast. Not tears, just disbelief. Then her voice changed, sharper. "You're punishing him for being a teenager." I leaned back in the chair. "He's not being punished. He's just not being subsidized anymore." That was the first time she looked at me with something close to hate. I'd seen disappointment in her eyes, resignation, indifference. But this was rage. Not because I was wrong, but because I was finally consistent. She stood up, walked away. The invoice stayed on the table for 3 more days, then disappeared. I didn't ask what she did with it. A few days later, I found Oliver in the garage, slamming the side of the dryer. The cycle had stopped mid-load. Clothes soaked, heat gone. I'd removed the app access. You couldn't start it manually anymore. He cursed under his breath and walked out. He passed me in the hallway, said nothing. I didn't ask. That night, Laura said, "You could have just told him." I didn't answer. The next day, he missed school. Said he didn't feel well. Probably true. Failure spreads like mold. You breathe it in before you even smell it. By the end of the month, I had reclaimed all shared access. My accounts, my passwords, my tools. I bought a new router, installed it in my office, created my own private Wi-Fi. When Oliver came in that night asking why the network name was gone, I said, "You're not on this one." He blinked. "So, are you gonna fix the main one?" "No," I said. He stood there waiting, then left. It was working. Not the revenge. Not the withdrawal. The clarity. That was the real freedom. No more pretending. No more waiting to be invited into a family that handed out empty chairs and called them thrones. I was done. I looked at Laura one night as she folded towels on the couch. Towels I'd bought for a bathroom I'd renovated in a house I'd kept standing. And I realized something. She had never once said, "Thank you." Not once in 5 years. Not for the mortgage help. Not for the rides. Not for the groceries or the braces or the holidays. I was the man who made the machine run. She was the woman who let the engine rot and wondered why the wheels stopped turning. And Oliver? He was never taught gratitude, just expectation. He opened his mouth and the world was supposed to fill it. I had filled it for 5 years. Now I let it echo. The final straw came in the form of a voice message. Laura had been in the shower. Oliver thought I was out back. He left his phone on the kitchen counter. It dinged, then played out loud. A boy's voice, someone his age, laughing. "Wait, your stepdad seriously canceled your debit card? Bro, that's savage. What did you do, crash his precious router?" Oliver's voice followed. "Nah, he's just bitter. Thinks we don't respect him. Whatever. He's just the background guy. Always has been." Click. That was the end of the message. But not of the noise. I stood there, listening to my own obituary, written in sarcasm. I didn't move, didn't confront him, didn't even touch the phone. I just turned and walked upstairs. That night I opened a new bank account. Private. Secure. I transferred everything. Savings. Emergency fund. The line of credit I'd co-signed for Laura's car, gone. I called the bank. Had them remove my name. Let the risk fall where it belonged. I changed the locks on the safe. Packed documents. Scanned photos. Not the ones of us, the real ones. My parents. My past. The parts they'd never asked about. And then I packed. Quiet. Efficient. No notes. No tears. I'd already left, long before my body did. I moved out at dawn. Not because I was hiding, but because there was nothing left worth confronting. I packed quietly. Not a single drawer slammed. Not a single item out of place. Just the slow zip of bags being filled, the click of clasps, the mechanical sounds of a man who's done cleaning up after people who never said thank you. I didn't leave a note. Just a message in the silence. This interface no longer includes me. My truck was already loaded by 6:20 a.m. I sat behind the wheel, engine running, breath fogging the windshield. For a moment I stared at the front door, waiting for something. A light flicker, a curtain shift, a last-second chase into the driveway. But there was nothing. They slept through my leaving the same way they slept through my presence. I left the house key on the counter. Took only what I'd brought into their lives. My tools, my books, my clothes, and the kind of silence you can't hang on walls. The studio I'd rented in Philly was small. No washer-dryer. No porch swing. No room for apologies. But it was mine. The fridge opened with a satisfying suction. The toilet flushed without a passive-aggressive complaint about noise. The floors creaked, but they did it honestly. Not like that house where every board whispered, "You don't belong." I didn't furnish much. Just a bed. A couch I assembled myself. A desk facing the window. I liked the bareness. It was honest. Everything in that apartment answered to me. The router. The thermostat. The coffee machine. Nothing required permission. Nothing withheld respect. I opened new accounts. New passwords. New subscriptions. It felt like cleansing a wound that had festered too long under someone else's bandage. The first week was weightless. Then the messages started. Laura's number, blinking on my screen like a guilt trip in progress. I didn't answer the first 3 calls. The 4th came with a voicemail. Her voice, low, tired, like someone trying to summon empathy from a place that had never known it. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she said. Oliver's, confused. "I'm confused. Just, can we talk?" Talk. We'd gone years without talking. And now she wanted dialogue? I didn't reply. Silence wasn't revenge. It was boundary. A few days later, another call. This time from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Oliver. His voice cracked in the first 3 seconds. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or panic. I didn't mean all that stuff, he said. I was just mad. I don't know. I was being stupid. Can we talk? Or whatever. Just call me. I didn't. Because what do you say to someone who treated your presence like a glitch and your absence like an outage? He didn't want me. He wanted the system restored. Laura followed up with a longer message. No more passive tone. This one had bite. You could have at least explained. We built a life together. You think you can just vanish because your ego got bruised? You walked out on a child, David. You walked out on me. I played that one twice, then deleted it. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. She wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the infrastructure. The bills she no longer had a name attached to. The digital scaffolding that had held up their lives. I had been the invisible network. And now they were disconnected. Weeks passed. Philly was loud, but not in the way their house had been. Not that subtle, biting volume of things unsaid. It was human noise. Alive. Honest. Sirens. Arguments. Music bleeding through drywall. I liked it. I joined a local gym. Started waking up earlier. Ate simpler. Slept deeper. I didn't miss them. I missed who I thought I was in that house. The man who'd matter someday. But that man was a myth I'd paid for with years. One Sunday morning, I got a call from Laura again. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. The voicemail this time was soft. Almost too soft. Oliver got into a car accident, she said. He's okay. Just shaken up. I thought you'd want to know. That was it. No request for help. No ask for money. Just an update. I didn't return the call. Not out of cruelty. But because there was nothing I could give that wouldn't be interpreted as reinstatement. I couldn't be the man who left and came back when it was convenient for them. If they wanted closure, they'd have to build it themselves. That night, I sat on the couch with the windows open. Autumn air filled the room. I scrolled through an old hard drive. Backup photos from before I moved in with them. I saw myself at a job site, smiling with grease-stained hands. A road trip I took alone in '09. My brother's wedding. My niece holding a balloon bigger than her head. There was a whole life before them. I'd buried it. Convinced myself that sacrifice was noble, that being the background guy was honorable. But no one builds statues for the man behind the curtain. I opened a blank document on my laptop. Typed one line. Love without respect is slavery. Then I stared at it for a long time. The next week, I saw Laura's name again. I let it ring. Then silence. Then another message. I cleaned out the hall closet. You left a jacket. Let me know if you want it back. I didn't. It had stopped fitting years ago. Eventually the calls slowed. The messages stopped. I think they finally understood. I hadn't left to prove a point. I'd left because the point had already been proven. No one noticed when I was there. But everything broke when I left. That was the truth. And truths, once seen, can't be unseen. Sometimes I wonder how they explain me to people now. Do they say I was unstable? That I abandoned them? Do they omit me completely? Erase the man who drove Oliver to his first haircut with a real barber. Who waited in the ER until midnight for a sprained ankle. Who spent hours restoring Laura's father's old vinyl player because she once said she missed the sound of crackle. Do they tell people I was just the tech guy? Maybe that's all I ever was to them. But I know what I was. I was the one who showed up. And showing up, consistently, quietly, without applause, is the most radical form of love there is. But it's only love if someone recognizes it. Otherwise, it's just labor. And when labor goes unpaid long enough, it strikes. I struck. No banners. No protests. Just silence. And in that silence, a message they'd never forget. Now I ask you, whoever hears this, whoever reads it, was I wrong? Was I cruel? Or did I finally stop pretending that love, unreturned, was still noble? Would you have endured it? Would you have stayed? Or would you have finally, stood up, walked out, and chosen peace over servitude? Tell me, because I already know my answer. And this time, I won't be muting myself to make anyone else more comfortable.